Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I'm Farooq Patafi. Today we are going to talk about the economic condition and especially the politics around it. Today we saw quite a kerfuffle in the Parliament of Pakistan, in the lower house of the Parliament, where the Federal Advisor of Finance was there and he actually explained the situation. The bottom line was that while the government is trying to control inflation as well, macroeconomic stabilization is there, and at length he also explained what exactly was going on with the current account deficit and how the government has managed to fix it. But on the other side, of course, coming from the opposition, there was talk of inflation, which is there, and especially the food inflation. Today, we are going to talk about both the politics around this matter as well, and then we are going to talk about the economic measures that the government has taken or promises to take to control inflation, unemployment, and many other aspects. We are going to talk about all these matters and more. In order to help us understand these issues, we are joined by quite an eminent panel. We are joined by Ghazala Saifi Sahiba, who is who is an MNA of the ruling Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. Thank you very much, ma'am, for being part of the program. Next to her is Kaisar Ahmed Sheikh Saab, who is an MNA of Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. And next to him is Dr. Niaz Murza, a political economist, also a columnist of renown, and quite a regular guest on this show as well. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Ghazala Sahib, I have to start with you and I have to ask you, what went wrong in the parliament today?
Well, there was a regular exchange of speeches from one end and the other. And while I was already sitting there, we saw suddenly there was a speech by Umar Ayub, who was a very senior and a very serious kind of a parliamentarian and a minister. And he takes his job very seriously. And he was trying to answer a lot of questions which were put up by the other side. And while addressing, there was some criticism that came up in the middle, and which was not taken in a good way by the other side. And I do not see why did they emerge in that way. I mean, senior people like Naveed Qamar Sahab, and the way he came up as a wrestler in the middle, I would say, was something which was not acceptable. And there was
you're talking about the energy minister. His comment was essentially about the genetic makeup of the two parties which are in opposition, that corruption is in their DNA. Do you think that that wasn't provocative at all?
Well, after having 2-3 terms each of them having 2 or 3 terms each, and then the kind of situation that we have come into because of the corruption that we have actually experienced in the previous governments, and at the lowest ebb that the government had to face the decline that we saw, that we entered into the government, is obviously a gift from the previous governments, and we cannot deny the fact that history cannot be completely eradicated from the scene. We have to continue to tell the world and the people whom they are trying to misguide and tell that, you know, the inflation is brought by this 17 months run government. That is not the case.
Inflation actually is, especially food inflation, has more to do with the executive decisions within 1 year. But we are going to talk about that. Let me bring in Kaisar Sheikh Saab as well. Sir, you can comment on what was said earlier. But there seems to be a cognitive dissonance somewhere. I mean, on one side we hear the government that everything bad that is happening to the economy is because of your government or People's Party's government. And when we listen to you, and I remember 5 years when you were in power, you used to say that the economy is really progressing and everything is hunky-dory. Which one is true, sir?
You see, actually people should be knowing about it. These are the facts. Economy, you cannot say one thing and actually it is different. Everybody knows the figures, and the figures or the statistics are coming from the government organizations. So I think there should not be any confusion. So it's very clear when we were in power last, we left 5.8% because I was at that time chairman finance committee. I
Right.
know very well 5.8% was the growth. No one has challenged that growth rate even
Right.
today.
But everybody keeps on challenging your dollar rate
That
and
is-
the way you were propping it up
Yes.
by throwing dollar into the market.
Yes, but you see that we agree that is also given. The figures is given. Nothing secret in that.
But that
You see,
creates a current account deficit,
that's
right?
created, but that was it so miserable? Of course, that created, but I still feel that was the correct and the right thing to
Right.
do, because you see, if you are the people are suffering with such huge inflation, that rate for the food inflation more than 20%. So this is unprecedented in Pakistan economy, Pakistan to history.
Is it? Because in the first 1 year, your party also encountered something similar.
No, nothing.
When they
nothing,
took over,
no,
and
no,
they blamed, and this is
No,
quite amazing. They
not-
blamed a lot. They blamed People's Party for that
Of course,
states.
in the People Party tenure, it was higher, the inflation.
Right.
But when we left, it was 6.5. Everybody knows.
Right.
And the statistics are not being deferred. Every party is accepting
Right.
that.
That is important.
So
Let me bring
my
in-
point is, I should tell you, my point is that this growth of about difference of more than 3% means 1,500 billion rupees not going in the pockets of Pakistani people.
Alright.
1,500 billion rupees. And still, you see.
We are going to talk about that claim also.
Yes, of
Let
course.
me go to Dr. Niaz Murza and ask him. There seems to be quite an interesting thing that seems to be happening. The finance minister's change. Every government saw more than one finance minister, right? And I remember Ishaq Dar Sahib used to say everything is great, but his policies were reversed by his own successor from his own party. And then we saw that the rupee started sinking. And since then, everybody keeps on blaming everybody else. So what exactly is going on with economy right now? Do you think that this is understandable, that government's first priority was to fix the macroeconomic picture? And how does how do the people understand that, sir?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of blame to be assigned to both sides, the
Right.
PMLN government as well as the PTI government. Of course, the growth rate was high, inflation was low under them, but how was that managed? By keeping the rupee artificially low. It should have been allowed to depreciate. If they had allowed it to depreciate, then imports would have been more expensive, say about 2 years ago, and the growth rate would never have touched 5.8%. It might have been 4.5%, and the inflation at that time would not have been as low as 5 to 6%.
Right.
So because of the delay, the whole thing then had to be done suddenly. The depreciation, the devaluation, and everything, and suddenly inflation, instead of increasing gradually, increased a lot in
Right.
one go.
Dramatically.
Dramatically.
initially, yeah.
But then, now 18 months later, I don't think we can keep saying that it's entirely because of, or even primarily because of, the wrong policies of PML. And certainly it's still having some impact. But the thing is that, the last round of devaluation took place at least 6 to 8 months ago, right?
Right.
So that devaluation related inflation is no longer in effect now.
Right.
Then, internationally, the oil prices are also going down.
Right.
That's also a major driver of inflation.
But
Then,
here's another question for you regarding inflation, since you are addressing that matter. On books, the idea of keeping the interest rates high was to curtail inflation.
Yeah.
But here seems to be quite an interesting thing, right? On one side, the interest rate is 13.25. On the other side,
because
inflation keeps on.
that relationship works much better in developed countries where
Right.
there is a link between interest rate and inflation, because credit is such a big part of the economy that if you increase interest rates, then spending goes down.
Okay.
But that's not true in Pakistan. So increasing interest rates so high is not having an impact. So right now the situation is the government is not borrowing from the state bank at all.
Right. Today,
it's also
Hafiz
cut
Sheikh Sahab said it.
development expenditures, but still, if the inflation is so high, it could be the result of some of the taxes that this government has increased, and then a failure to control hoarding and those kind of things. The mafia that you talk about. So it's entirely, the more we keep, moving away from the, PMLN regime,
Right.
it becomes more and more difficult.
Somebody has to take responsibility of today.
Now, and there are plenty of
Right.
things that you could blame, not having the right people in the right place from the beginning, delaying, the IMF package so much. So a whole lot of issues.
Yeah, but these are essentially recommendations of IMF that we are implementing. And that might have actually caused inflation right now. Let me go back to Hazala Sahiba and ask her, ma'am, we have seen a kind of intervention from the Prime Minister of Pakistan where there is going to be relief through utility stores. But here's the problem. Your party is very clear on one issue, that there is corruption. There was corruption in the system and it still is, and you are fighting it. Now, the institutions you are using are known for actually not performing. For example, utility stores. I mean, I don't know whether you have ever gone there. There usually is a huge line and people get substandard commodities from there. So how are you going to fix that problem?
Well, I live in Karachi,
Right.
and very close to my house was a utility store which has now been removed from there.
Shuttered, yeah.
It got shuttered a few months back when there was a change in policy and administration was changed, and there was a lot that was happening. And I've been to a lot of to utility stores a lot of times to buy my own ration also and to buy the ration for my servants as well from there. I think that's a very reasonably priced place, and it was then. It's again been announced to deliver commodities on cheaper prices compared to the market, and I think it's a good facility for common man to
No,
go
it
and
is.
get.
There's no-
But talking
Ideally-
about substandard stuff,
Yeah.
obviously something which you will get for 250 rupees rice, which you get in the market for the elitists, that is not there. But it's not something which is not. I remember
What
when
I'm-
we were kids, there was a ration card. We were very small, and my mother still tells us
Yeah.
that during that ration card time, people used to get not very good rice, and there used to be a tota chawal also, some broken rice, the basmati rice which was broken, and people used to cook that for regular cooking. Otherwise, why can't we as a nation decide that what do we want from, are we going to go for very high standard of food? Yes, we should. As people
but,
should be
I'm
provided with
talking
the
about staple
No.
food, ma'am. With due
The
respect,
staple
when
food, the
we are-
atta there is fine. There
yeah,
is
the
nothing
price
bad.
has appreciated, by the way. Month on month, it has gone up. You might actually bring it down, but it is going up. On the other side,
The prices don't
I
remain the
understand what
same.
you're saying.
Yeah.
But with due respect, there are instances of, instead of, mirche, right, chilies, they are crushed, various other things like stones were found in various instances. So there are places where it's corruption, and corruption is going on. And I understand your party doesn't have a magic wand.
Well, I don't think there will be a lot of checking, and there has to be a lot of checking. And the government does not in any way want to provide common man with mirchi which is crushed with sand in any way. We want to provide them the best that we can and in the best prices that can be afforded by the common man. Also to give them concessions on a lot of, on a variety of commodities. So that is the major thing, and that is why a lot of meetings have been happening. Prime Minister is very serious about providing common man a better life in whatever circumstances we have gone through. It wasn't easy to start off. A lot of corruption was there, and it might still be there, but since our motto is to eradicate corruption completely, there will be no stone unturned to let that happen.
Right. Another very interesting thing. Yesterday we saw Haroon Akhtar actually briefing the Prime Minister. You already have quite a lot of people in the government's economic team, right? Haroon Akhtar Sahab, last time I remember he was with PMLN. So what exactly are you trying to find out? Is there something that might be missing? Can you tell us more about Haroon Akhtar's presentation, or what exactly was going on there?
Well, I exactly do not know what happened during that presentation, but Prime Minister has the right to take advice from whomever
Yeah,
that they
right is there.
considers it to be.
Nobody is
But
saying
then,
that he
but
doesn't
then
have right.
it doesn't mean that whatever Harun Akhtar has advised is taken seriously to the 100%.
Okay.
It has to come from different ends and see how it works out. And if it's workable in some ways, then obviously it would
And
be
is the Prime
implemented.
Minister and your party, are you all cognizant that because of the high interest rate, there might be a squeeze on the job market? Because if I'm an investor, I can park my money in a bank getting 13.25 interest rate. Why would I spend money in the market, right? That's why jobs are being lost.
Well, there was an announcement today in the Assembly by Mr. Hafiz Sheikh about
Youth
decreasing the the interest rate,
Okay.
and also providing better opportunities for businesses which are going to have an impact on the exports of Pakistan.
Right. Again, Kaisar Sheikh Sahab, you can comment on whatever has been said, but here's the thing. Your party seems to be questioning, loyalty of certain people that are working with the current government. For example, when the finance advisor actually brought up the matter or criticism of Raza Bakar Sahab, the governor State Bank, your party's representation there, Shahid Khaqan Abbasi, actually says that then assure us that they are not going to leave the country for 10 years. I mean, your own leader is sitting abroad and you're talking about this. Why exactly so?
No, he's sitting abroad, but he is ill and he
No,
is,
Shehbaz Sharif is not.
no, but he's coming back. He may have gone for 2 or 3 months, not for, you see, Mr. Hafiz Sheikh has been the third time finance
Right.
advisor,
Right.
and always when he is not there, he is not in Pakistan.
Right.
So he's from World Bank and all those institutions. So I don't go into that controversy. I'm disappointed what Hafiz Sheikh said today.
Okay.
I thought that he being a person from a finance side and economic side,
Yeah.
his figures and his revelation and his talking is not sensitive. He did not tell on the floor of the house the right thing. So, for example, he said that in 7 months there is a target is in deficit about 100 billion, although it is more than 300 billion. So on the floor of the house he said like that. And again, you see, he said that we refunded 500 billion loan.
Okay.
Now just it's very amazing that they inherited 30,000 billion and they paid back 5,000 billion.
Yeah,
so
but-
it means just a minute.
But he
So,
was talking about the
yes, just a
price
minute.
of the rupee.
Just a minute. You will also be very surprised and amazed. Out of 30,000, they paid back 5,000. So then it remained 25,000. Now presently it is about 42,000. So they took new loans in 1.5 years, 17,000 billion.
Okay.
They never.
No, but he
this.
said that the amount actually rose because rupee depreciated.
Yes, but that is only 400. Everybody can calculate. 100
Right.
billion is the loan, foreign loan.
Right.
If 40% is devaluation, it's 4,000 billion. So they took 16,000 billion.
Okay.
So of course I agree.
Right.
That is because of that. That is a loan, but that is because of that devaluation. But the other 12,000 billion. What is the logic in that?
Okay.
So it's a very important thing
Right.
that what will happen in 5 years, they will take 30,000 billion, more than that, with the speed they are going.
Right.
So you see,
But-
then they were always, Mr. Imran was always asking us that we took so much loan.
He was critical of borrowing.
Yeah, criticizing. Although in 5 years, PMLN, to their figures, took 10,000 billion.
Are you
So in 1
including
year,
all the debts that you have incurred?
yes, we inherited 20,000. Then when we left, it was about 30,500. To total 10,500 in 5 years. Of course, it is more, but it is averaging 2,100 in 1 year.
Right.
They took in 1.5 years 16,000 billion.
Right.
how-
Let me
how
go
will
back
they-
to the expert on the panel and ask Dr. Niaz Mirza. Sir, amazingly, I remember the similar kind of debate during People's Party's time. Ma'am just brought up the issue of ration card that was Bhutto's time, right? After that, every government has been struggling with the economy. I mean, you can say that during so-and-so's time, everything was hunky-dory, but it wasn't, right, for the poor man. So Am I right in concluding that we as a nation haven't been able to handle economy so far?
Yeah, and forget Asian tigers and so on.
Yeah.
Just look within South Asia, where Bangladesh is today.
Right.
Bangladesh, are, whatever you want to call it, are
They're
poorer
progressing
half,
very fast.
whatever. Their population was higher than us, their GDP was much lower than us. And look at, they are the fastest growing nation
Right.
in Asia Pacific, and that all despite high corruption and dynastic politics, the two evils that we blame in Pakistan for all our problems. They haven't focused on trying to eradicate corruption.
Right.
They have focused on bringing growth despite high inflation, and that's the story all over the world. China, Brazil, whichever third world country has grown rapidly
Right.
in recent years, it hasn't done it by first eradicating corruption
Okay.
and then bringing growth. It has done it despite high corruption,
No,
and
I
then later on,
understand.
corruption
We
goes
have
down.
had this
Yeah.
argument quite
So
a few
the
times
biggest,
here.
The biggest
But,
failure has
sir,
been.
regarding this corruption issue
Yeah.
that we have to tolerate it, you understand that the cost of living of the common man is also increased because of corruption.
Well, I mean, there's
mean,
no hard
Wagda
data on that.
prices
There's no
keep
hard
going
data on
up.
that. If inflation increases, there's a clear link between, say, a government borrowing from state bank, devaluation. Those things are very clear to see. But I don't think
So
anybody has been able
price of electricity keeps on going up.
to. Well, that's
And it
because
is
of your circular debt. That's because
no,
of your
that is
circular
also
debt.
because of the theft.
Pilferage,
Yeah.
yes.
Theft.
So, you have to do reforms. So, that is the basic thing. But, the big two failures have been, the failure to, expand our tax revenues and our export revenues.
Yeah, but we keep on talking about the farmer, and the problem is we might not be able to increase that revenue, but we somehow keep on compromising the size of the economy itself.
Yeah.
The GDP seems to be shrinking.
Well, I mean, it shrunk because of this massive devaluation. Because when you divide it by a higher denominator,
Right.
then of course it goes down. But the fact is that we are falling behind in even South Asia. Forget Asian tigers.
Right.
So like right now you see that the current account deficit has been brought under control. But how has it been brought under control? By using those standard IMF recipes. Where
You don't agree with those recipes?
No, I'm not saying whether I agree or disagree,
No,
but
no,
what I'm saying
do
is...
tell us. Do you agree?
I'll tell you at the end, but just listen to me.
End of the program
No,
or
no,
the
just
sentence?
2 minutes, just 2 minutes. So, the state bank governor just sits in his office,
Right.
he devalues the currency, he increases the interest rate, right? And the current account deficit.
He doesn't devalue the currency. Market actually devalues the
Well,
currency.
I mean, it's dependent on their market operations, of course. It's not dependent on just that. How much they buy, how much they sell, that basically
The
decides.
interest rate
And
is
interest
in
rate,
his
yeah.
direct control.
But in order to get your economy going, it's not enough to just dish out standard IMF recipes. You have to come up with creative, homegrown solutions,
Right.
and then sell them to
And that's
the society, to important stakeholders.
That's a great point.
Right.
Let me.
But that hasn't happened
back
at
to
all in this
Ghazala
government so far. Whether you talk about tax revenues, export revenues, whether you talk about state operated enterprises, whether you talk about the circular debt, the big challenges that this country was facing, nothing has happened on that.
Right. Ma'am, so here's the question. I remember that we spent past 5 years talking about the possibility of a charter of economy. When your government actually took over, Shehbaz Sharif, standing on the floor of the House, once again floated it, right? Former Chief Justice also came up with the idea that there should be dialogue between the institutions, and your party sort of also agreed at the start. But is there a cost to the idea that you actually bring together all the opposition parties, all the stakeholders, and develop a matrix where you agree on the future steps for the economy's improvement? Because I remember that you promised not only housing projects, you also promised, while in your manifesto, also job creation to the tune of millions.
You see, a lot of initiatives are being taken by the government to provide indirect employment to people. This is the initiative program for the youth, which provides entrepreneurship, and also one small entrepreneur, when he starts or she starts her business, is able to provide at least 4 to 5 people employment. And job creation is also, I mean, it's an indirect way, but then there will be a lot of job, this thing.
Right.
And there will be proper planned investment on those who have got some professional knowledge and know-how about small businesses to start off with, not random distribution of computers or taxis or cars to people who are not willing to chip in into the economy of Pakistan. And Prime Minister has all the positive, like today's speech was all about the positive initiatives that were taken, that are being taken and will be in place in a passage of maybe
Right.
6 months or so.
But what
Raza
about
Bakr
Charter of-
sitting there and Hafiz Sheikh giving a speech. I'm sorry, I did not intervene while my colleague was saying things about the speech that was falsely
Right.
given. I don't think it was an international speech, and I mean heard by all. And there at the floor, he cannot be quoting wrong numbers.
Right.
When this State Bank governor is also sitting there, and Hafiz Sheikh might have served different parties at different levels, but here sitting in the parliament in the lower house today and giving a speech regarding the economic condition, which was the question of the hour. Everybody had got the right to ask questions. From yesterday, this was the floor was open
But
to
regarding-
ask and discuss and give suggestions, where the ministers were supposed to give answers to whatever was coming up. So Hafiz Sheikh was brought in today to give answers to the queries of the other side as well as the side
but
that is.
I understand that. But regarding numbers, you know, in Pakistan, numbers also usually go wonky. For example, yesterday when your advisor on media, right, was giving figures, she mentioned the cost of sugar to be at 70. Today, Hafiz Sheikh Sahib was talking about 68 rupees. So 2 rupees here or there, that matters also, right?
It does matter,
So
yes.
it seems that the government also has to work on bringing the numbers together. Is it not true?
Well, what I would say is that information minister is supposed to inform
The media.
the media and the people what is happening, but the main numbers come from
The finance
the
division.
finance ministry.
Right.
And I would consider the numbers which are given today by Mr. Hafiz Sheikh to be the
As the final valid numbers.
authority on that, yes.
Right. And regarding Charter of Economy, do you want to actually work with the opposition parties to bring in
there was a lot
reforms?
of debate about Shehbaz Sharif Sahab to become the main. There was a lot of debate that he should
Public Accounts Committee's chairman.
Committee's chairman,
Right.
and then he vanished. And then he vanished from the scene completely. And
That's a very important
and
point.
you see, that is not being responsible enough to your country. If you want to be a senior parliamentarian from other side, from the opposition, it's your responsibility to stay put with whatever that you've demanded for many months.
Right.
And then you were suggesting different names. Make this person and make that person.
Ranat
Things don't
Tanveer.
happen like this. I mean, if you were so adamant on becoming the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, then you should have stayed there. And you,
Yeah, but
I mean, not everybody has to go because at the end of the day,
But are you going to extend
at the end of the day, ex-Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif is a convict, and he has gone there on special request by his doctors that he's not well and he needs treatment.
Right.
If
That
he's
is-
there for a treatment, how many people in the family are
hang on.
going to be in the operation theatre for
I
him?
get that
His-
point.
his- his-
My
his-
question was about extending an invitation for dialogue regarding deep-seated economic reforms, right? And you can talk about how bad the opposition is, but you will need their support to pass legislations that might actually fix the economy permanently.
Well, actually, it's a role of both the treasury benches as well as the people sitting in the opposition. The people in the opposition have a bigger role to play in that way, because government has got obviously the biggest role to play. But the opposition, the special people who were ministers and on very important positions prior to the fall of their government, are now supposed to show some respect to the people whom they are representing in the parliament. So they are not just there to oppose, but
It
they're
is a
there
tool,
to,
yeah.
but they're there to resolve the situation as well.
Right.
Until unless we see when the Prime Minister walks into the parliament, there is an uproar and they do not even want to acknowledge his presence there.
Right.
So they will have to respect the presence of the Prime Minister, his position as a Prime Minister, and then come to terms with reality that
Right.
they are no more in the government, they are
Yeah,
in the
but-
opposition. And the opposition also has to play a fair role in resolving the situation, the economic
I
situations
see your
that
point,
are prevalent
but,
in the...
ma'am, with due respect, it is also about fixing the economy that will actually help you. I noticed that
And
while
help
we are
them as
talking, Kaisar Saab's list, the notes that he is taking grows and grows. So you want to come in, sir?
We had meeting today with the IMF.
Okay.
They came to the finance committee and we had detailed 2 hours
Yeah.
meeting. So I told them that since your program, what is the better result you can quote?
Okay.
The growth is reduced since we took the program. The taxes are not collected as per their thinking. Then inflation is not as per their calculation. It's much higher. And then the budget deficit actually, it's 9.4% is the highest in the history of Pakistan.
Okay.
4,000 billion will be the deficit in the budget this year. We left it 6.5% of the GDP, the budget deficit. It was around 2,500
Yeah, but
billion.
your party or your government also did something which was unheard of.
Yes.
You were leaving in 1 month and you prepared the budget for entire year. Actually
Yes, yes.
doling out money.
I myself,
You opposed
I
it,
did
right?
not. Yes, I
Yeah.
opposed. I don't did not agree with them.
Yeah,
but
but
anyhow, they
Responsibility has to be fixed
yes,
somewhere
of
there
course,
as well.
of course. But my point is that you see, they are mainly one positive step. They say that the balance of payment or balance of trade is better. Of
Right.
course, that is one. But with that, what is the cost of that? The people are suffering. The inflation rate is such high; it is unprecedented. And one thing I tell you,
It is not unprecedented, sir. We have seen similar kind of
no, the
rates.
food inflation is highest. Never like that. More than 20% has never been in the Pakistan. I have a business experience of
24% in the
I have
first
a
year
business
of
experience.
Pakistan People's Party
No, that
government.
was the overall
Yeah, they are not,
inflation. I'm
president.
talking about food inflation. That is.
No, sir. But sensitive price index has been fluctuating
Yes,
during your time and their time as
But
well.
our time, it has never been like that. We left 6.5% inflation. It is
I remember your MPs telling us that instead of tomatoes, use something else.
Of course, that may be, but
prices
I'm
were
telling you the rate.
prohibitive.
I am telling you the rate of the deficit in budget is around 4,000 billion this year.
Right.
It has
But
never been
earlier
like
you
that.
were talking about inflation
Yes.
being unprecedented.
Inflation is unprecedented. The food inflation.
Right.
In the People Party period, there was something like more than 10%, double digit.
24.
But never in PMLN
Right.
5 years. But what I am asking is that they were mainly on 2 aspects. They were criticizing us that we have taken more loan. Then they are criticizing about our corruption that in that period. You see, you must have learned 350 containers came out without payment of duty, and that was quoted by DG Intelligence, Mr. Zahid Khokhar.
Okay.
And from the lower staff to the highest staff of the FBR, they are themselves alleged to be involved in that, and the inquiry has been initiated.
Right.
So you see nothing, and in our time, you see, we were
So,
expecting that from 42nd economy in the world.
Yeah.
Presently, we were 42nd economy of the world, and the prediction was that in our period it will become around 25th. Now again, the prediction is that next 10 years, our economy will be the 50th in the world, while Indian will become third in the world.
Okay.
And India has become
India
economy.
claims to be third right
Yes,
now.
they will. The prediction is that in few some 5 to 10
They were
years.
claiming that they are going to be 5 trillion and they are going to be number 1. But that won't happen.
Yes,
soon,
but
thanks to Modi.
my point is that they were in 1990. They were 4 times to Pakistan.
Okay.
Presently, they are around 10 times to Pakistan. Their economy.
Right.
10 times.
But since you brought up the matter of inflation, here's the concern. During General Pervez Musharraf's time, there was a structure that was given to local governments, right? And because of those local governments, there was a mechanism on ground at the grassroots level to control inflation. Your party and People's Party sat together and dismantled that network.
I have a business experience of 54 years.
Sir.
I tell you, this system cannot be successful. This utility stores in our period also was
No,
not.
I'm talking about Nazim's system.
Nazim is different, but if we are talking
Local
about price,
government. Price control mechanism is local government.
Yes, they cannot. This is not their way to do. There's not their job to do it. I tell you one thing. I predict. They are telling that they will control the prices with this utility store.
Okay.
They can never.
Why not?
Actually, because you cannot control the prices lower than the world market prices.
No, but
Now,
it is a targeted subsidy, right?
only 15 billion rupees subsidy out of the market of 45,000 billion. What will it do? Nothing. 200 rupees a year they are giving to one. If below poverty is 75 million people, and if we take families, it may be 1.5 million families,
Right.
15 million
Yeah,
families.
I'm going
So
to come back
15
to
million families, how can you control give them concession with 15 billion rupees? It's illogical. And I tell you,
hang on.
my point is
Are
just
you
one
objecting to
sentence.
the mechanism?
Yes, I am objecting. It has failed, always failed.
Sir, with due
It has
respect,
never been-
your government was in power. It didn't scrap the
It
mechanism.
scrapped.
It also
It
used
was-
the mechanism.
It was failed in our government also.
Sir,
The
Ishaq Dar Sahab actually introduced similar
of
kind of
course
subsidies.
introduced, but they failed in our period. My point is, my party also could not get it successful.
Okay.
All those utilities were closed down
Right.
in that period.
Right.
And this mechanism is again being initiated. It can never be successful because you cannot control it.
Right.
The free market
I have
system,
to-
artificially,
I have
you
to go
cannot,
to Dr.
you cannot
Niaz-
keep the prices artificially.
You
will-
made the
in,
point,
in,
sir.
in just my last sentence,
Okay.
1 or 2 days they can sell at this price in a month.
Right.
But all other 28 days they will not give, or otherwise they will give to their favorite persons. The corruption will be.
Who will do that?
This utility store person, the shopkeeper,
Okay.
they will give to their
But
own.
ma'am is
no-
saying that there is going to be some check and balances, right?
cannot,
I have to go
cannot.
to Dr. Niaz Murza. Ma'am just wants to come in. If you want to correct or actually correct the record, please do. Then I have to go to Dr.
Well, it's not just one initiative and it's not one thing that is given to the people. There are health cards, there is SR's program, there are a lot of concessions that are devised to be given to the people. It's just about food. Food is, yes, important for the food prices to be stable, for the people to have a peace of mind and go ahead and work in their own domains. But at the same time, medical facilities are important. Other
No, that are very important. But the problem is that you were talking about SRs, which is essentially a poverty alleviation, right? A program. So it focuses on poor class. We are talking about the middle class or working class as well. That is under the squeeze. And we have to talk about that. Somehow we haven't been able to find some kind of mechanism to address that concern because they are primarily your voters. Dr. Niaz Mirza, you want to actually address all these things as well?
Well, first of all, the Charter of Economy, you're saying they should sign one. I think they've already signed one.
Right.
And it's a one-line one, just go to the IMF and do nothing else.
Okay.
All three parties have, gone to the IMF.
Right.
They haven't, done, good negotiations. They've all taken, especially with PTI now because of all the delays, the kind of IMF programs that were negotiated, very tough, not good for the economy, especially the high interest rates.
Right.
But then, I'm also not really enamored about the idea of a Charter of Economy because it comes from the Charter of Democracy,
Right.
which was a very different thing. If you look at the points under the Charter of Democracy, they're just related to a few constitutional amendments and then their own behavior, that they will not try to undermine each other's government and so on. It wasn't about some sort of a, strategy, political strategy and so on. Economy is very different. You have to, increase exports. You
No,
have
but
to.
it was your point that we need structural changes to the economy.
Yeah.
You have mentioned circular debt, right?
Yeah.
There is something wrong going on there.
Yeah.
Repeatedly
And
we keep-
everybody recognizes that, but then, that
So you
recognition.
have to agree. You all have
It's
to agree to fix
the
that.
agreement is already there. It's about the implementation now. Everybody knows we have to increase our taxes, our exports, support SMEs, this, that. But then, who's done it well? That is the main problem. The implementation. All three parties has been so poor.
Right.
And coming up with a new idea. I mean, PMLN was slightly better in that sense that they brought CPAC, but then the planning was quite poor in the sense that the whole focus on large scale infrastructure, which
No,
doesn't bring
essentially
you
not
enough
even on that,
taxes
sir.
or exports. So it should have been a mix of export processing
the
zones and
primary
infrastructure.
target of the first phase of CPEC
It shouldn't
was
have been.
energy projects.
It should have been a mix.
It wasn't even infrastructure. It
Well,
was
there
only
was
a small
infrastructure,
portion.
the
of it.
roads and everything.
No, it was a smaller portion. When you
Smaller
talk
portion,
about the
but
money.
so I am saying it should have been a better mix, a bit of export processing zones, or something that also brings in jobs, revenues, exports immediately, rather than those infrastructure related and power related, which
Right.
don't immediately bring you either tax
Right.
revenues or
Can
export
you
revenues.
make this comment also your conclusion, because I'm told that we are left with 3 minutes.
I've concluded that.
Right. Ma'am, you want to give a conclusion?
Well, I do agree with a lot of things that are needed to be focused upon. And I also agree that the opposition should also play a major role in devising a futuristic plan and a vision for our country. But unfortunately, things are not going in the right direction as far as there's any kind of a relationship that can help people to understand from both ends that, you see, this is a very serious issue. And only Prime Minister and his cabinet will not be able to resolve a lot of them. Everybody will have to be focused on providing better solutions
Right.
for better exports in the future, because that should be our main forte. And also, we should be able to provide the best for, I mean, it doesn't matter if there is I mean, obviously that it is of a major concern that there is inflation.
Right.
But then even during that time, we can provide a better living for our poor and the middle class communities,
Right.
to have a stable living standards for
Let
our
us hope that happens. Kaisa sir, your conclusion.
My only one sentence that this will be a complete failure, this utility store system.
Let us hope not, sir. The
No,
poor
let's
is
hope.
really
Please.
oppressed.
Let's hope.
If you
I
say that,
pray,
it-
I
Yeah.
pray,
Yeah.
but I tell with my business
This is not a very
experience,
good assessment
I
you are
tell
giving.
you
I'm
about
sorry, I'm
with
not.
my business
I will not
experience,
agree with you.
With my business, it will be complete failure and another scam you will
Let
create.
us hope that doesn't happen,
Let's hope.
but we
Let's
will
pray
be
and
vigilant.
hope that it is not like that.
And
but
let us be-
my business acumen, I tell
Right.
you,
Kaisa sir-
if it is if I have proved right,
Right.
please let me know that this is the planning, this
No,
is the vision.
this is what I
should
was
be-
trying to
this
say.
should be, all aspects should be considered threadbare.
Kaisa sir, this
Before
is what I was
deciding.
trying to say, and humbly, that we have to be vigilant. Let us hope
This
it
is
doesn't
not,
become.
nowhere in the world this system is prevailing nowadays.
Yeah, but not essentially. There are countries where it is. But let
Maybe
me
some socialist
let me thank you, sir. America is not a socialist country, and
They are not
have-
doing it.
So in various parts, they are trying to do it. But we'll have this discussion later in the in another program. Right now, I'm told that we have to conclude the program. Let me thank all the guests. Ghazala Safi Sahaba, thank you very much for your time. Kaisar Ahmed Sheikh Sahab, thank you very much for your time as well. Dr. Niaz Murza, always great having you in the show as well. Viewers, you have listened to this discussion. And given that we are talking about measures which at times, Kaisar Sheikh Sahab just mentioned that it is essentially a socialist model. And I was thinking about the US, where Sir Bernie Sanders seems to have carried the first primary as well. But this is not all. All over the world, the wall between socialist and capitalist system is falling. And everybody is at liberty to reach across and get whatever implements they need. The question right now is if there is something very systemic and structural about our economy that needs to be fixed. It will not be fixed by confronting each other. It will be through consensus. And today's Parliament's mood was not in tune with that kind of situation. Let us hope in coming days we see more focused consensus building that actually takes us forward. This was today's program. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.